My name is Emily Parker, and I am 27 years old. Life has never been particularly easy for me. From a young age, I always felt like an outsider within my own family. My parents had a clear favorite, my older sister, Linda. She is 30 years old, outgoing, and effortlessly charming. To my parents, she could do no wrong. They always doted on her, praising every little thing she did, while I remained in the background, unnoticed and unappreciated. I tried my best to earn their approval. I worked hard in school, studied late into the night, and graduated with honors. I secured a good job as a marketing manager, built a stable life for myself, and never asked them for anything. But despite all my achievements, they barely acknowledged my efforts. No matter what I did, I was never enough in their eyes. Linda, on the other hand, never had to work as hard. She jumped from one failed business idea to another, accumulating debt, yet my parents never seemed to mind. Instead, they would always encourage her, support her, and even bail her out when things went wrong. It was as if she was the golden child, and I was just an afterthought. The only people who truly saw me and valued me for who I was were my grandparents. They lived just a few streets away from us in a beautiful old house, and I spent as much time there as I could. My grandmother, Sophia, and my grandfather, Michael, always made me feel special. They listened to me, encouraged me, and reminded me that I was important. My grandmother would often say, "Emily, you're the one who keeps this family together, even if they don't realize it." Her words were my comfort during the difficult days. But last year, everything changed. My grandparents both passed away, and the grief was overwhelming. Losing them felt like losing the only people who truly cared about me. But what made things worse was what followed, the battle over their inheritance. My parents and Linda wasted no time in discussing who would get what. I overheard snippets of their conversations, where they casually assumed that everything, the house, the savings, and all the valuables, would automatically go to Linda. "They'll leave it to me. I'm the oldest, and Emily doesn't really need it," Linda had once said, laughing as if it was all a joke. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did, and it hurt more than I could admit. I tried not to dwell on it. My grandparents had always been fair and loving toward me, so I held on to the hope that they had made arrangements to distribute everything fairly. But as the months passed, my parents and Linda became more and more confident. They spoke as if it was already decided, treating me as if I wasn't even part of the equation. Then, the day of the will reading arrived. We all gathered at the lawyer's office, a cold, sterile room filled with dusty legal books. My parents sat on one side, whispering excitedly with Linda about how she could use the inheritance to start fresh. I sat quietly on the other side, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what to expect, but I had a feeling that this day would change everything. A tall man with glasses, Mr. Victor Reynolds, entered the room with a thick envelope in his hands. He looked around at all of us before clearing his throat and saying, "Thank you all for coming, let's begin." I saw my parents exchange confident smiles with Linda. They were certain they already knew what the will contained. Mr. Reynolds opened the envelope and began to read. "To my beloved family, I want to first thank you all for being here today. This is not only about material possessions but about the legacy and values that Sophia and I cherished." I glanced at my parents and Linda. They looked impatient, clearly eager to skip to the part where their names were mentioned. I held my breath, waiting for what was to come. "First, to Linda Parker, we leave a token of our appreciation for her energy and ambition, the antique clock from our living room. May it remind her that time is precious." Linda's face fell. "The clock?" she blurted out in disbelief. "That's it, a clock?" Mr. Reynolds didn't respond. He simply continued reading. "Next, to David and Patricia Parker, our children, we leave our love and gratitude. We also leave the $20,000 in savings held in the joint family account." My parents gave small nods, though my mother's smile looked forced. It wasn't the large inheritance they had expected, but at least it was something. But Linda, her face was turning red with anger. She clenched her fists, clearly struggling to contain her frustration. Then, Mr. Reynolds looked at me. "And finally, to Emily Parker, our granddaughter, who has always been kind, hardworking, and a source of pride to us." I felt my heart stop. "We leave the remainder of our estate. This includes the family home, all additional savings, and the investments made in her name, which total $500,000. Silence filled the room. All three pairs of eyes snapped toward me, but I was frozen in place. Did I just hear that correctly? The house. The savings. $500,000. Me. Linda broke the silence first. What? She shrieked, her voice echoing through the office. After everything that had happened, I decided to move into my grandparents' house. It was a place filled with memories, both happy and bittersweet, but it also felt like a fresh start. Living there gave me a sense of security I had never truly known before. With the inheritance I received, I carefully planned my future, making sure to use the money wisely. A portion of it went toward renovating the house, fixing up things that had been falling apart over the years. It was important to me to maintain the home's warmth and character while also making it my own. The rest of the money, I invested in something I had always dreamed of, a small business. It was an idea I had carried with me for years, and now, for the first time, I had the means to turn it into a reality. Not long after my grandparents' passing, Linda made one last attempt to fight the will. She was determined to get what she felt was rightfully hers, but the court dismissed her case without much consideration. After that, she vanished from my life. I assumed she was too bitter to face me, but honestly, I was relieved. I had no energy left to deal with her endless greed and resentment. As for my parents, they reached out to me a few times, trying to repair the relationship. However, I could never forget how they had treated me for so many years. Their sudden change of heart felt insincere, as if they only cared now that money was involved. In the end, my grandparents' love and generosity gave me more than just financial security. They gave me the strength to stand up for myself. For the first time in my life, I realized I deserved better than the way I had been treated all along. As time passed, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Living in my grandparents' house was a constant reminder of them, but instead of sadness, I felt comforted by their presence. Every room held memories, and in those memories, I found peace. My business started gaining traction, and for the first time in years, things were finally looking up. I felt like I was on the right path. Then, one rainy afternoon, an unexpected knock at the door shattered my sense of calm. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before peeking through the window. My stomach twisted when I saw who it was, Linda. She stood on the porch, drenched from the rain, an unmistakable scowl on her face. I considered ignoring her, pretending I wasn't home, but I knew she wouldn't leave so easily. With a sigh, I reluctantly opened the door. "What do you want, Linda?" Without waiting for an invitation, she shoved past me and stepped inside, leaving wet footprints on the floor. "We need to talk," she snapped, her tone sharp and accusing. I crossed my arms and stood my ground. "I'm listening." She spun around, her wet hair sticking to her face. "You think you're better than us now, don't you? Sitting in this house, spending money that should have been mine." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I never asked for this, Linda. Grandma and Grandpa made their choice, and you know why they did." She let out a bitter laugh. "You don't get it, do you? Mom and Dad are furious. They're blaming me for everything, saying I didn't do enough to make sure we got what we deserved. They think I failed them." I frowned. "That's not my problem, Linda. Maybe for once in your life, you should take responsibility." Her expression twisted with anger. "Responsibility? Don't act so righteous, Emily. You think you've won, but let's see how perfect your life is when things start falling apart." I didn't like the sound of that. "What are you talking about?" She smirked, a dangerous gleam in her eyes. "You'll see. Don't get too comfortable. Things can change." After she left, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that she was up to something. A week later, I got my answer. A man in a suit showed up at my door, clipboard in hand. "Emily Parker?" he asked. "Yes, that's me," I replied cautiously. "I'm from the city zoning office. We received a complaint about unpermitted renovations happening at this property. I'm here to investigate." My heart dropped. "What? That's not true. I haven't done anything illegal." He shrugged. "I'm just here to check. If the complaint is valid, there could be fines involved." I knew immediately that this was Linda's doing. She was trying to sabotage me, but I wasn't going to let her win. I gathered all my renovation permits and took them to the city office the next day. The officials reviewed everything and confirmed that I had followed all the proper procedures. The complaint was dismissed. Still, the incident left me shaken. Linda wasn't done with me yet, and I knew she would keep trying to cause trouble. Then, a month later, I discovered something that changed everything. While cleaning out the attic, I stumbled upon an old chest tucked away in a dusty corner. Inside, I found photo albums, letters, and legal documents belonging to my grandparents. One envelope stood out. It had my name written on it in my grandmother's handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. The letter read, "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means you found the surprise we left for you. We always knew your parents and Linda would try to manipulate you or contest our decisions. That's why we took steps to protect you. Inside this chest, you will find documents proving that we started transferring assets to your name long before our passing. These assets include a separate trust fund with an additional $200,000. The account is in your name, and only you can access it. We hope this will give you the security and peace of mind you deserve. Your parents and Linda may never understand our decisions, but we want you to know that everything we did was because we love you. We always believed in you, and we always will. With all our love, Grandma and Grandpa." Tears filled my eyes as I read the letter. My grandparents had thought of everything. They had gone out of their way to ensure that no one could take what was rightfully mine. I felt a surge of gratitude and determination. I wasn't going to let Linda or anyone else undermine what my grandparents had worked so hard to protect. A few weeks later, Linda showed up again, this time with my parents. They stood on my doorstep, looking serious. "Emily," my dad said, "we need to talk." I let them in, though I had no doubt about why they were here. Once we were seated, my mom spoke up. "Linda told us about the other trust fund," she said, her voice tense. "We think it's only fair that you share it." I stared at her in disbelief. "Fair? After everything you've done, you expect me to just hand over money? We're still your parents," my dad insisted. "Families support each other." I shook my head. "You didn't support me when I needed you. Now you want me to support you?" "No." Linda glared at me. "You'll regret this." That was the final straw. I hired a lawyer to protect my inheritance and ensure they couldn't harass me again. Linda attempted legal action once more, but the court ruled in my favor. My parents stopped contacting me, and for the first time, I felt free. Years later, I heard Linda had fallen into debt, and my parents were struggling financially. They never reached out again, and I didn't feel the need to either. My grandparents' love had given me the strength to build a successful life, and I finally believed that I deserved it.